Welcome to Starbound, where every star tells a story. Today, what if the seemingly simple Earth hid a secret so profound it could shatter the ambitions of a conquering alien fleet? Let's get into the story. Commander Zirek of the Waynom Expansionary Fleet surveyed the blue and green sphere with a mix of excitement and disdain. The scout report had been almost laughable. Intelligent life on this Earth? Yes, but barely. Combustion-based engines, primitive radio transmissions, sprawling but technologically stagnant settlements.
A ripe world just waiting to be plucked,
His second Tavalic chirped, echoing the sentiment of the entire bridge. They'd seen this a dozen times. Primitive civilizations blind to the wonders of the cosmos, destined to wither away while greater galactic powers thrived. "Begin colonization assessments," Zirek ordered, barely containing his avarice. The Waynom had a knack for uplift, bringing such backwater species into the fold of their vast interstellar network had a way of smoothing relations during territorial expansion. If these humans proved adaptable, well, that could expedite the whole resource extraction process. He allowed himself a cruel smile as his fingers found the comms panel. "Signal the secondary fleet. It's time to secure our newest asset." The initial scans had revealed peculiar planetary anomalies. Monoliths built of stacked stone, a sinuous wall snaking across continents, towering pyramids rising from the desert. Zirek's science officer had dismissed these as archaic attempts at architecture. Laughable. They might make for interesting exhibits once the planet was securely under Waynom control. He imagined the museum, relics of a lesser race. Perhaps they could even entice other species to pay handsomely for a glimpse at such primitive ingenuity. There was always profit in backwardness. Zirek watched the sleek reinforcement ships pierce through the atmosphere, aligning themselves in a defensive posture above Earth's largest landmass. It was a show of strength, meant to both intimidate any potential native resistance and safeguard their burgeoning operation. His communicator buzzed, signaling a transmission request from the new arrivals. "Put them through," Zirek barked, settling into his command chair. On screen, a Waynom commander materialized, her crest feathers raised in a gesture of respect, but also impatience.
Report, Commander Zirek.
The female Lysina wasted no time on pleasantries.
Our long-range scanners picked up an unusual energy signature near this world.
Are you experiencing technical difficulties? Zirek bristled. Difficulties? Hardly. Our assessment is proceeding smoothly.
Then explain the signature, she pressed. It dwarfs any terrestrial source. Is it one of yours?
His antennae twitched uneasily. As I said, all is in order on our end. But his mind raced. What could possibly dwarf a Waynom ship in raw energy output? A malfunction? It was theoretically possible, but any glitch large enough to register on those scanners would have blown them all to stardust. Lysina's beady eyes narrowed.
Evasive. Let me rephrase my question, Zirek. What exactly have you found down there?
Everything we expected, he responded curtly. A pliable species with a whole planet's worth of untapped resources. Begin resource exploitation protocols. Maximum yield.
Negative,
she said, feathers practically vibrating with a suppressed agitation.
I'm detecting life signs, millions, no, billions of them. They seem to be concentrated in a single massive structure.
His amusement resurfaced. Had those scouts truly missed something so substantial? Well, then, perhaps these humans are slightly more advanced than we initially thought. Beam us a visual, Commander Lysina. He practically hummed with anticipation. Just how resourceful had these little creatures been? Lysina hesitated. Then a view of the planet blinked onto Zirek's screen. At first, it was a familiar mix of swirling clouds and blue continents. But as the image zoomed tighter, the structure Lysina had spoken of slowly formed, appearing where there was previously just empty space, a vast, jagged latticework of metal and shimmering lights. It hung in space like an impossible spiderweb, reflecting the sun's harsh glare. A collective gasp filled the bridge. This was no primitive collection of dwellings. It was a city. No, a megastructure of breathtaking proportions. Its scale rendered the assembled Waynam fleet a mere scattering of insects in comparison. Impossible! Zirek's voice was a strangled whisper. These tiny humans, with their outdated combustion and stone-based structures, couldn't have achieved this. Sensors are picking up active energy shields, advanced communication arrays, and... Lysina's voice trailed off in bewilderment. What in the abyss? It appears to be weapons systems. The colossal structure pulsed with life. Sections swiveled effortlessly, panels slid, and tiny dots fitted across its surface. It resembled nothing so much as a monstrous, slumbering hive suddenly stirred into wakefulness. Zirak felt the first tendrils of fear unfurl in his thorax. Their prey wasn't just some easily manipulated species. It was an apex predator feigning weakness. And they had just poked it with a very sharp stick. Suddenly, the megastructure crackled with an even brighter energy surge, and a single point near its center flared with unbearable brilliance. As his vision adjusted, a message filled his screens, rendered in the Universal Galactic Standard.
This is Titus. Unidentified ships, state your intentions, or face immediate decommissioning. The message bore no welcome, no warmth, only an ultimatum issued with chilling efficiency. The transmission cut off as abruptly as it had begun. The bridge was a whirlwind of frantic chirps and flashing lights as the crew scrambled to make sense of the situation. Zirek's mind reeled. How had they been so monumentally wrong? What fueled this megacity, this Titus? Its power source alone had to be beyond anything the Waynam had conceived of. This was no primitive backwater, but a forced cloak in a deception so perfect it had fooled their most advanced scouts.
Commander! Tavalek practically squeaked. They're hailing us again! The human face filled the screen. It was severe, angular, with eyes like cold steel, and an ounce of wide-eyed innocence they'd expected from a race on the cusp of interstellar flight. Waynam Fleet, you have violated the sovereign territory of the Human Union, the human said crisply. Your uninvited presence and aggressive posturing are considered a declaration of hostilities. Hostilities? Zirek squawked indignantly. This planet is... The human cut him off. This planet is Earth, cradle of humanity. We left it long ago, not out of weakness, but out of respect for our past. Our home is now in the stars, and we will defend it from any who threaten it. Lysina's voice broke through the stunned silence. Commander Zirek, I'm detecting massive energy buildups across their city. They're arming weapons. With those power levels, they could vaporize us. But their scans... Zirek sputtered, scrambling for any shred of superiority, any flaw he could exploit. The human on the monitor seemed to pity him. Our initial observations deemed your culture fixated on the visual markers of technological achievement. Therefore, we masked our advancement to gauge your true intentions. His voice turned hard. You have failed this test spectacularly. Panic threatened to drown out rational thought. Their pride, their carefully cultivated sense of interstellar supremacy, had been blown apart faster than a stardrift meteor. The roles were horrifyingly reversed. They were the primitives now, facing not an uplift, but annihilation. We mean no harm, Xeric managed, the words bitter on his tongue. We were under the mistaken impression that... Your intentions are irrelevant in the face of your actions, the human interrupted. You arrived with a fleet, not an envoy. You sought conquest, not cooperation. Your choices have made this encounter necessary. A ripple of desperation ran through the Wynam crews. They were explorers, not warriors. Their ships, while efficient, were designed for survey and expansion, not head-to-head combat with a foe of unknown technological might. We request a parley, Asina blurted out, her crest feathers drooping in submission. A chance to re-establish peaceful intentions. The human paused, his steely gaze unwavering. For a moment, Xeric dared to hope that pragmatism would outweigh retribution. Then the human spoke. Very well, Wynam. Your desire for de-escalation is noted. However, trust must be earned. He outlined the terms. The Wynam were to withdraw their entire fleet beyond the boundaries of the solar system, a total standstill. Only then would a single diplomatic shuttle be permitted to make its way to Titus for formal negotiations. You violate these terms, the human warned, and it will be your final act. Xeric swallowed hard, the shame of surrender mingling with the relief of buying time. He signaled his agreement. This encounter, this monumental miscalculation would echo through Wynam history. Their thirst for expansion had blinded them, made them complacent. This would be a harsh lesson to learn, but perhaps if they were lucky, the only consequence would be a bruised ego and a re-evaluation of their scouting protocols. It was a far better fate than extinction. The retreat was humiliating. Every Wynam stared at the ever-shrinking Earth and the monstrous Titan with a mix of awe and lingering terror. The order to disengage their weapon systems grated, amplifying their sense of helplessness. Yet obedience was now their only path to survival. Within hours, the Wynam fleet was nothing more than a distant glimmer against the tapestry of stars. Stillness descended on the bridge, a stifling silence broken only by the low hum of life-sustaining systems. This is a disaster, Xeric, Tavalek squeaked, a note of accusation in his voice. Xeric bristled, then slumped. His second was right, of course. His name would be synonymous with this debacle. His career, built on the foundation of Wynam's superiority, was in tatters. We have underestimated them, Xeric muttered. The truth was bitter, but it had been swallowed whole. But it is not over yet. Our disgrace can be salvaged. Salvaged? Tavalek's tone dripped with disbelief. Those humans, Xeric's voice took on an uncharacteristic edge of cunning. They have something worth taking. Their city, their technology, the sheer energy they command. If we can secure that, perhaps this monumental blunder can be turned to our advantage. His second's eyes widened. Xeric saw the greed echoing his own, the same desperate ambition that had gotten them into this mess. It was a dangerous gamble, he knew, a throw of the dice where failure meant certain death. But what other option did they have? Xeric turned to his communications officer. Prepare a transmission to Prime Command. Do not use standard encryption. I need everyone to grasp the magnitude of our discovery. He would paint a picture of a species possessing unfathomable power, ready to be harvested by their more cunning and adaptable Wynam cousins. They would spin this not as a defeat, but as an opportunity, one that justified not retreat, but the mobilization of a force unlike anything the Wynam had ever assembled. After all, the game wasn't over. The prize was too great. Humans might have built that monstrous city, but the Wynam were determined to possess it. Prime Command's response arrived with chilling efficiency. They shared his assessment. Twisted into triumph, the humans were a treasure trove to be secured at all costs. Reinforcements were being prepared. Fleets not just from nearby sectors, but a concerted force the breadth of Wynam territory. They were gambling their entire race on this play. Jirek felt a thrill of excitement mixed with sickening dread. If they succeeded, his name would be etched into history, not in shame, but in glory. And if they failed, well, there'd be no one left to whisper his mistakes. With their orders from on high, they went dark. They rerouted power, masked their energy signature, and became a ghost fleet drifting amidst the stars. It was a long, tense wait. Every stray blip of radiation, every distant asteroid set his crew on edge. Discovery meant death, yet they waited. Meanwhile, the diplomatic shuttle prepared. It wouldn't be armed, nor heavily shielded. A token gesture to lull the humans into a false sense of security. Jirek himself would lead the delegation. He practiced his expressions in the reflection of his view screen. Not the arrogant conqueror, but a humbled envoy, wide-eyed and eager to learn. It was a performance he despised, but it might just be the key to their survival. On the comms panel, a new signal blipped. It wasn't Wynam, but the cold, crisp transmission from the megacity they were about to betray. His human counterpart greeted him as if they weren't standing on the precipice of galactic war. Procedures for the shuttle's arrival were relayed, docking coordinates sent.
Commander?
Tavalik squirmed.
Must you proceed with this charade? Isn't it time we revealed our true intent?
Timing is everything, Zirek hissed back. Every second they spend on protocol, on diplomacy, is a second they don't spend preparing for our return.
He met the human's gaze on screen and replied calmly.
Shuttle Alpha is en route to Titus, bearing emissaries of peace.
It was a lie. A big, monstrous lie. But then again, weren't the humans masters of deception themselves? The journey to Titus was painfully short. Each passing minute tightened the knot in Zirek's thorax. His team, the best negotiators and manipulators the Wynam had to offer, wore their practiced smiles, but their underlying anxiety mirrored his own. The human city loomed larger and larger until it filled the shuttle viewports. Its scale was unfathomable. Zirek saw not just structures, but ecosystems within ecosystems, self-sufficient and impossibly complex. This was an arcology, a world unto itself, and his hunger for it grew stronger with each breathtaking detail. They breached the energy shield, feeling a slight shudder as the shuttle systems automatically adjusted. Then they were directed to a docking bay, one of hundreds, thousands, carved into the vast outer hull. Zirek was struck not only by their organization, but by a nagging worry. With this level of preparation, could the humans already suspect their deception? The airlock hissed open, revealing not a welcoming committee of dignitaries, but a squad of heavily armed humans. Humans clad in sleek battlesuits that screamed of advanced weaponry, far surpassing anything displayed by the scout ships. Zirek swallowed. This was not the reception he'd anticipated. "Welcome, Wynam," greeted the lead soldier, his voice filtered through his helmet, but nonetheless crisp and authoritative. "Please follow me." They were escorted down stark metal corridors, their weapons confiscated, their communications equipment jammed. Zirek felt a brief flutter of panic before masking it.
all was proceeding according to plan. Show weakness, breed complacency, let the humans think they held all the cards. At last they entered a vast chamber. Floor-to-ceiling viewports offered a dizzying view of Earth, cradled in its protective sphere of lights. But the most striking feature wasn't the scenery. It was the single human sitting at the head of a long, polished table. The same human from the broadcasts. He rose as they entered, his presence as severe as his battle-suited guards. "Commander Zurich, I presume?" He gestured to the empty seats across from him. "Let us begin." His eyes gleamed with a sharp intelligence that rattled Zurich's carefully constructed facade. The negotiations were surreal. Zurich weaved his lies effortlessly, misinterpretations, apologies, a burning desire for peaceful cooperation, and above all, awe at humanity's technological marvel. He spun tales of the Wynam's humble origins as resource scavengers, eager to learn from such an advanced civilization. The human, whose name he gleaned was Admiral Richter, remained inscrutable. He listened intently, occasionally posing questions that cut through the platitudes, forcing Zurich to improvise or offer carefully worded half-truths. It was like navigating a minefield. At one point, Richter bluntly asked, "If you value peace, Commander, why did you arrive with a fleet primed for war, rather than an exploratory vessel?" Zurich swallowed nervously. A misunderstanding, Admiral, a terrible one. Protocols are misinterpreted. Please accept my sincerest apologies." Inwardly, he fumed. If only the Wynam had detected even a fraction of the human's might, they would have approached with open hands, not hidden weapons. Yet he forced himself to play the role of the contrite fool. Richter didn't push the point, and that only heightened Zurich's concern. Was his deception too transparent, or were the humans playing a deeper game, feeding him enough rope to hang himself? Finally, Richter leaned forward. "The Union desires peace, Commander. We are not expansionist. However, trust must be earned." He laid out preliminary terms: limited trade, stringent observation periods, the complete demilitarization of nearby Wynam sectors. Harsh, but livable. It bought them time. Zurich feigned gratitude and relief, painting a picture of a Wynam society eager to change, to embrace peace under human guidance. It galled him, but it was necessary. Survival demanded it. As the talks concluded, Zurich was granted a tour of the non-military sections of Titus. It was a whirlwind of gleaming hydroponics bays, vast recreational areas, and advanced research facilities that made his head spin. He itched to send this all back to Wynam Command, but knew it was impossible under the humans' watchful eyes. Yet the tour was a calculated move on Richter's part. It reinforced the human superiority while also planting the seed of doubt within the Wynam ranks. Such technology, such abundance. Wouldn't his people be better off under human guidance rather than striking out on their own? Back on his flagship, cloaked in the depths of space, Zurich was a whirlwind of activity, carefully parsing his report. The Wynam Armada mobilized, hidden far beyond human sensor reach. They waited like a coiled viper, ready to strike. Yet the seeds of doubt, planted so cunningly by Richter, lingered. Zurich found himself drawn back to the images of Titus, the thriving biospheres, the effortless abundance, the sheer mind-numbing scale of it all. It was a way of life his own kind could only dream of. Perhaps there was another path, he found himself thinking. When were the Wynam embraced the human union, not as conquerors, but as willing partners, even subordinates? He knew it was a dangerous line of thought, traitorous even. Yet he couldn't deny the allure, the simple logic of it. Zurich sent coded messages to offers he deemed like-minded, those who had tasted the human's power and saw the futility of defiance. He wove a seductive narrative, one of opportunity, not conquest. Slowly, subtly, a faction began to form within the fleet. When orders arrived from Prime Command, a full attack plan targeting Titus's seemingly weakest points, Zhirek didn't comply immediately. He prevaricated, raised questions, expressed newfound concerns about civilian casualties and the needless loss of life. The whispers of doubt he'd sown began to amplify, causing confusion and discord among the fleet. His second, Tavalik, finally confronted him, eyes narrowed with suspicion. "You've changed, Commander. Their tricks are twisting your mind." "Perhaps they've opened my eyes, Tavalik," Zhirek countered. "Why fight for scraps when we can have the feast? Imagine our people thriving within their union." Tavalik scoffed. "As slaves, barely better than livestock." "Or as partners," Zhirek insisted, "guided by their wisdom, elevated by their technology. It is the future, Tavalik, whether you like it or not." A tense silence fell as Tavalik wrestled with his loyalties, to his commander or to the Wynam way of life. It was a microcosm of the struggle splitting the entire fleet. The final straw landed with the arrival of the next human transmission. It wasn't a war cry as expected, but a carefully worded trade proposal, a gesture demonstrating good faith and the desire for peaceful coexistence. It was the perfect fuel for Zhirek's cause. He circulated it fleet-wide, accompanied by his own carefully chosen words painting a future of cooperation versus feudal, bloody conquest. He reminded officers that the humans had proven technologically superior and, most importantly, had shown restraint even when provoked. The battle raged on the communication channels, traditionalist hardliners desperately clinging to the Wynam ideal of expansion through conquest. While Zhirek's faction gained strength by the hour, the fleet that had arrived as a unified force was now fracturing, split by a fundamental question. Were they conquerors or survivors looking for their best path forward? When Prime Command's furious demands reached Zhirek, demanding adherence to the attack plan, there was a pause. A collective breath held across hundreds of ships. Then Zhirek sent his reply. It was brief, defiant, and sealed the fate of the Armada. "We refuse your orders. The future of the Wynam lies in collaboration, not conquest. Hail the human union." Chaos erupted on Prime Command's end, a flurry of enraged transmissions and threats of retribution. But it was too late. Too many ships had already switched allegiance, throwing the meticulously planned attack into disarray. Loyalists were forced to watch helplessly as nearly half of the fleet under Zhirek's command broke formation, not with weapons raised, but with shields down. Zhirek sent a second message, this time not to his former superiors, but to Admiral Richter. "A portion of the Wynam fleet has renounced hostilities. We seek immediate talks for unconditional surrender and integration." Richter's response was swift, and Zhirek noted with a pang of relief, devoid of any trace of vindictiveness. "Titus awaits, Commander Zhirek. Welcome to the dawn of a new era."